Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I hope you can hear and see us okay. We're just going to wait just one more minute while everybody joins. And you will see that you do have your cameras and your microphone switched off at the moment. I'm going to go through and try and allow you to switch your cameras on. Let me allow that quickly while we're letting everyone in. We will keep the mics off for now. So as we go through, if you do have any questions that you want to ask during this training and information session, you can feel free to pop them in the chat, or you can wait until the end where we will have time for questions. Hopefully, actually, we'll definitely allow time for questions because it's obviously a really important session around the Climate Action Fund today as well. So at that point, I'll welcome you to open your microphones if you'd like to ask that directly to us as well. So we're probably going to have a few more people joining. We're expecting about 25 today, I think. So I'll let them into the meeting room as we start. But firstly, welcome. Thank you all so much for joining us. I think a lot of you know me already. I'm Emma. I look after our community partnerships here at World Challenge. And I'm also joined today by the very wonderful Liz Tuck, who I think all of you probably know as well, who is our head of product and delivery here at World Challenge, and really the backbone of so many things when it comes to sustainability. Liz was sort of the inspiration and the spark that really started a lot of this journey at World Challenge. So it's really brilliant to have her here and involved in this session too. And then we have Emily Sandon as well, one of our brilliant product managers, who many of you probably also know, here to help answer our questions as well. So thank you very much for being here. We think this session is probably going to be 40 to 45 minutes. I would think. I've put in an hour in case there are lots of questions. And today we're going to look at a couple of different things. So the session is titled and it's going to focus on sustainability, sustainable practices, and what that might mean, what that means to us, and what that might mean to you, and how we might think about that in the coming year. And then we are also going to talk a lot about our brand new Climate Action Fund. So this is a very exciting fund, an evolution on how we look at sort of reducing our carbon emissions as a business and within our supply chain. So involving all of you as partners. And we're going to go into the detail of that today, what that is, how you can apply, and hopefully answer any questions that you have as well. So to get started, I'm just going to go through a quick agenda. And we're going to first look, as I said, at what is sustainability. We're going to look at why it matters. We're going to look at sustainability at World Challenge. And then we're going to look at small actions we could possibly all take this year, or some of us if we're not doing so already. And then we're going to look at explaining why. So obviously having these principles, having these values, doing these actions is brilliant. But when teams are on the ground, educating young people is so important as a part of that bigger picture in terms of why we do what we do and how we can help to shape future generations. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to explain what you're doing to students when it comes to taking sustainable action, and why that's so important. We're then going to start to think a bit more long term, and this is where the Climate Action Fund comes into play. So there's obviously lots of things we could all do. We're all learning and we're all evolving and adapting and sort of improving what we do when it comes to sustainability all the time. But when it comes to long-term thinking and helping you to really develop and implement your long-term goals, that's really where we want the Climate Action Fund to come into play. So that's where we're going to talk a lot more about that. And then at the end, as I said, we're going to have time for a Q&A session as well. So you can pop your questions in the chat throughout, but if you wait, I'll welcome you to open your microphones at the end and you can ask any of us your questions related to any of the topics that we talk about today. So firstly, I do just want to start by acknowledging that we are all in very different places when it comes to sustainability. Sustainability is obviously a bit of a buzzword itself. You know, we're going to talk today about what that means in practice. And we're all coming at that today from lots of different angles, lots of different experiences, lots of different countries and cultures. And when it comes to where you are, you probably know a lot more about it than I do, what that means in practical terms. So what I really want from this session is really just for all of us, if nothing else, to take away just one thing that we think, oh, actually, we don't do that at the moment, or we could probably do that better, and think about that for this year. And then obviously I hope that all of you will apply for the Climate Action Fund. It's really exciting sort of start of something quite new here at World Challenge, and you are the core of that. So you as our partners, you are the ones on the ground developing and implementing these really incredible projects and initiatives. And so this really needs to come from you. I don't want to sit here and say, we want to fund this and we want to do that. I really want you to tell me what you and your community need, what will help you on that journey. And I really hope that once we've had this session today, you'll all feel really confident in applying for the fund this year. So to start with, we are going to look at what is sustainability. So I mentioned it's a bit of a buzzword. It's a word that gets thrown around often. Unfortunately, it's a word that some people use and not mean very much. They might put it on their website. They might say, we are sustainable, but they might not have actually thought really what that means and what actions they're doing that are sustainable or are not sustainable. So at its core, sustainability means meeting today's needs without damaging the future. And there are three core pillars when it comes to sustainability. We want to look at environmental sustainability, we want to look at social sustainability, and we want to look at economic sustainability. So environmental, we want to look at our land, we want to look at our water, we want to look at protecting our wildlife and our natural resources. When it's social, we want to look at preserving cultures. We want to celebrate heritage, maintain traditional skills, and preserve languages and all of the different wonderful things that come with that. And then when it's economic, we want to ensure that everybody in the world has a sustainable livelihood. You know, everyone has access to education, everyone has access to healthcare, and everyone is able to live a comfortable life. And why do all of those three things matter? They matter because they are all linked together. So one can't happen without the others. You know, you will all know, if a community doesn't have access to sustainable streams of livelihood, they're not in a position to protect their natural resources. If we don't protect the skills, the heritage, all of the wonderful knowledge that is within our communities, we won't have the knowledge in the future to protect our environments or develop those streams of sustainable livelihoods. So they're all really, really important. We're going to talk today more about emissions and protecting the environment and reducing the emissions that we produce. But we know that all of these three things are incredibly important when it comes to sustainability. And all of these things are things that you do already, because as a partner of World Challenge, we are aligned in terms of our values and our mission. So a lot of these things you will already do. I'm going to now pass over to Liz, who's going to talk a little bit more about the World Challenge view when it comes to sustainability. Thanks, Liz.
Thanks, Emma. Hi, everyone. Nice to see some familiar people, and I think a few of you that I might not have met before, but it's nice to be here. As Emma kind of mentioned at the start of the call, for World Challenge, this has been a journey. We're going to talk a bit more about that today. And I think sustainability is something that you kind of, well, Emma said, like, companies claim to be sustainable. Like, I don't think you ever kind of actually get there. Like, you're always working towards it. There's always more you can do. There's always more you can learn. There's always improvements to make. When I talk to people about sustainability at World Challenge, I always start with, actually what we do is inherently unsustainable. Like, we fly people all over the world, we generate lots of emissions. Some people could argue that, why are you doing it then? Just stay at home, and then we'd save all of that. We wouldn't be creating that kind of harmful impact. But if we stayed at home and we didn't do the trips, then we wouldn't get all of the positive benefits. So there's a great amount of impact that comes out of what we do. There's obviously huge impact to the young people that travel with us. They learn and grow in so many ways, which hopefully most of you have had the opportunity to witness. But they become more confident, they learn leadership, they become resilient, they get out of their comfort zones, they learn about different cultures, and most of them, I believe, take that with them then into the next stages of their lives. They make small changes, or sometimes big changes, to what they do when they get back home in their own community, in their career, that's been influenced by that experience. And that kind of positive impact of the trip goes on for years and years. And that's just the students. There's then the communities that we work with, the investment that we place in your communities, and the impact that's created by you as a result of that. There's also the investment we make in the destinations, the support we provide to different stakeholders in the destination by travelling there, that helps them to grow economically as well. So there's a huge amount of positive that comes out of the trip, which absolutely justifies continuing, but we have to be really mindful about the impact. And for me, it's about turning the dial up on the positives, making sure that we're making the best of those, giving those students lots of opportunities to learn, supporting you guys in the best ways that we can, but also mitigating our negative impact. So looking for ways that we can reduce our emissions, looking for ways that we can be more environmentally friendly as we travel, reducing our waste and things like that. So we're always looking for ways to improve in this area. This Climate Action Fund that we're going to talk about today, and this session, is all part of that. So helping to educate, spread the word, get people engaged in making progress in their own communities, is something that will help to continue to drive positive change. And as we kind of talk more and embed more sustainable practice into everything that we do, the students also learn about that and their influence to live in a more sustainable way themselves. So that impact just keeps growing and growing. So there's heaps still to do. There's always heaps to do. It's always evolving, but it's great to be able to kind of work with you to see what the next steps will be. Thanks, Emma.
Thanks, Liz. Let me make sure I can hear. Perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much, Liz. So before we move on to talking about the Climate Action Fund and those bigger steps that you might want to take this year, I do want to take just a minute for us all to really think about the small actions. Now, you might look at this screen. I'll also share all of this afterwards. So it's quite small. I don't know how well you can see it on your screens where you are. And I also want you to have this session to use for your own training purposes or to think about in the future as well. So I'll make sure I share everything. But you might look at this screen and think, oh, we already do all of that. And that is brilliant, right? You might already do all of the things that I have written on the screen. And when it comes to environmental choices, provide large water containers for our teams, or encourage them to use their reusable water bottles that they have rather than plastic bottles. That's something that we ask everyone to do. We don't want to use single-use plastic on our trips. You might already provide plates and cutlery that are washed and reused rather than using plastic options that get thrown away, or pack lunches in paper bags, or encourage the team to buy their own sort of packed lunch boxes that they can reuse and take home rather than plastic sort of single-use options. You might already use water carefully. I know that for Many of us, especially our partners in Morocco that are here today, during the summer, the water becomes a challenge. And we have water shortages. That's already something we're doing. You're thinking about how we can use water carefully, how we can switch off things like lights and equipment, fans, air conditioning, when they're not in use. Obviously, these reduce costs, but they also reduce the environmental impact that we're having. When it comes to our social impact, you will all be paying your staff fairly and providing safe working conditions. As I mentioned, we have high standards and requirements for working with World Challenge. You're all employing and training local people, helping to preserve local cultures and traditions, and providing opportunities for students to participate and learn for those local skills as well. And when it comes to our economic impact, again, it's something we're all doing. But what I want us to think about today is, could we do a little bit more this year? Are we buying goods and services locally? Are we supporting local businesses wherever we can? And are we always planning projects that are going to improve the economy and the community and the environment long term? So you will all hear me say a lot when we talk about World Challenge projects, what is the long-term goal? What is your long-term strategy? We don't want to be involved in something that relies on World Challenge funding year after year. We don't want to be involved in something that's really thinking short term. We want to help you. We want to be involved in things that are really evolving and have so many different positive impacts on the community and the environment long term. So where our investment, where our student participation comes in, that's what we want them to see, because we also want them, as Liz said, to come away and think, these are small changes that I could make. I could not use plastic bottles in the future. If I go to university, I want to study this because I want to learn more about this. And within their community, think about long term, how they could make a positive impact there as well. So lots of this you probably already do. There's lots of things that I haven't written on here that you already do as well, I am sure, or are thinking about doing this year. But I just want, while we're here, for us all to think about one realistic change that we could make, or one realistic improvement we could make to things that we already do. I'm not going to ask you to put them in the chat. You can, if you want to, if there's something that you're thinking about doing that you think would be helpful for other people on this call. But I just want us to take a minute and think about that. And then as we're planning for our year, not just when it comes to World Challenge, but for the other things that we're all involved with, think about how we could make a change that, would make a difference this year, because they all do. While you're all thinking, I can just share one of mine. And mine is related to the World Challenge office. We've just moved into the World Challenge new office. It looks beautiful. And at the last office, we had recycling stations set up so everyone could separate their waste, and it could be recycled. And we had mixed results with that. We did all of that within our offices, but then when it came to the wider building, I struggled to really understand how that waste was then being separated on that wider level. So one of my goals this year, it's something that I can do, and I can do within our new office, is really work with the office management team and really understand that better and make sure that our waste is being separated and staying separated once it leaves our office building. So that for me is one thing that I can improve this year, that's small, but will make a difference. Okay. Liz, back to you.
Back to me. So we just wanted to take a moment also to pause on some of the things that you can do when students are with you. So we've talked about that kind of importance of the students being educated around these topics, in the idea that we want them to kind of take that away and embed it in their lives when they get home. But if we're explaining some of these initiatives, it can also help them to better understand the context. So we talk a lot with our leaders in particular about teachable moments on our trips. Looking for teachable moments is a skill. It's finding that time where it naturally comes up, that it's easy to spread a bit of awareness and give the students a bit of education on something, because it feels natural, because of something that's happening around it. So we don't need to plan long kind of lectures about sustainability, which it's hard to engage the students with. We can build it into things that are already happening, and help them to understand the context of your initiative, but also it will help them to better understand the global context and the correlations that exist between what they do at home and what happens in other parts of the world. So I always talk about plastic water bottles and single-use plastic water bottles because it is, I think, one of the absolute easiest sustainability changes that we can make. And we do ask you not to provide any single-use plastic water bottles to students. Students travel with water bottles and they travel with water purification. So all they need is a source of water that they can purify and they are good to go. But you might find that students still perhaps prefer the taste of bottled water, or they like going to the shop to get bottled water because it's cold, or maybe they're buying lots of soft drinks and they're generating lots of plastic bottles. So talking to them about why that's problematic, is one thing, and the impact of plastic waste and the fact that it doesn't ever really go anywhere. It's kind of with us forever. But also your context. So it may be that in your community there isn't recycling, and the students may think, oh, it's fine because it'll just get recycled at home. I just put it in the recycling. They're not thinking about where they are and the difference in their situation. So you might then have a teachable moment where you're able to talk to them about the problems of waste, what happens to waste in your community, why it's important to reduce waste, if that's appropriate to where you are. So it's all about finding those stories that are relevant to where you are. Emma mentioned earlier that in Morocco we often have water shortages in the summer, and we obviously have big groups staying in communities. They all want to shower because they're all hot, but if you have 20 people taking a shower, it's a lot of water. I similarly know that when I was trekking in Nepal, it's the same thing. We don't shower on the treks because there's a water shortage. If every trekker showers every day, there won't be enough water for the community, but also for things like cooking and other needs. So if you can explain why these things are challenging for your community and help the students to understand the context, then they can, one, be more understanding of the things that you're asking them to do, like not take a shower. But two, they can also start to just understand more about different contexts around the world and why sustainable practices are important in a long-term sense for kind of that interconnectedness of people and planet and how it all kind of links together. So please try to think about things that are relevant in your location. It may be that, you're explaining to the students about the showers and not using too much water, and you use that as the teachable moment to bring it up. It might be things that just naturally kind of come along as you're interacting with them, that you notice and you think, oh, I could tell them a bit more about that. So try and build that in where you can, so that you can give them a little bit more of a deeper understanding of where they are and how things are. Thanks, Emma.
Thanks. Excellent. So now we're going to move on to our long-term thinking. So obviously all of these smaller actions all impact the long term as well. But what I want to talk about now is sort of the evolution of World Challenge, our approach to carbon reduction, sort of emissions reduction. And then we're going to move on to talking more about the Climate Action Fund. So how we want to be involved in those bigger projects that you're looking at that will help you to be more environmentally friendly. So first I'm going to talk just a little bit about where we've come from at World Challenge and really our reasons for launching the Climate Action Fund this year. So World Challenge has always been at the forefront of our industry when it comes to measuring our emissions and looking at ways that we can reduce them. And prior to 2022, World Challenge invested in gold standard carbon credits. So lots of you will already know what carbon credits are and how they work. But they compensate for emissions by funding verified carbon reduction or removal projects. Lots of companies, lots of industries use these. And for us, that was, for most companies, that was the best option at the time. What we found was that these projects weren't necessarily taking place in the destinations that we work in. There weren't teachable moments for our students when it came to this. We had sort of our emissions that we were creating over here. We were purchasing the carbon credits over here, but there wasn't a connection for our students to really give that sort of tangible understanding of the emissions that they're creating and the work that was being done to balance and compensate for that. Now, carbon credits are also quite widely criticised for their effectiveness and their integrity. So some are still brilliant, but lots of companies moved away from relying on them. And for us, we did that. Not just for that reason, but also because we really wanted to focus the budgets that we had on the areas that we love to explore. So it was really about putting that money into the ecosystems and the environments and the destinations that we travel in. So from 22 to 25, we focused our budgets on reforestation and regeneration programs. So what these do, they focus on emphasizing the long-term health of an ecosystem, and they deliver multiple benefits. So we're looking not just at removing carbon, but also looking at resilience, looking at livelihoods within a community, and lots of other benefits for regeneration projects as well. And for this, we were able to protect areas within our destinations. So when we were doing pre-departure learning with our students, we were able to talk about how we were working with external partners in Tanzania, for example, who we were working with on these regeneration projects. So it helped to connect it better for our students. It focused much more sort of their mind on where they were and protecting the environment in the destinations where they were going to be traveling. But because we were doing this with an external partner, our team still couldn't visit. And for us, as Liz has mentioned, and as I've mentioned a lot throughout this call, that education is a really, really key part of a World Challenge trip, that education around the emissions that we do create and how we can do better in the future is a really key part. And that has led us through lots of discussions and exploration in this area to launch our Climate Action Fund. And there are lots of reasons why we want to do this, but really the key reasons are the ones that I have put on the screen and will share with you. So I'm going to walk through them, and we see you, our partners, as the key here for this fund. So as I mentioned at the beginning, we really, really want you to take ownership of this, to feel like you can apply for all of the different things that you would like to implement where you are, and I'll get our support for that. So as we move into 2026, one of the key things that we want to look at is reducing the emissions within our supply chain. So this is something we've always done. We've always looked to see where we can reduce the environmental impact that we have, how we can plan better routes, stay in different accommodation, eat different foods. Actually the impact on the ground that our teams have is quite low. They eat locally, they camp often, they trek, they're not using vehicles all the time. So compared to your average sort of tourist, the emissions that they are producing are low. We will continue to do that, and part of the Climate Action Fund focuses in that area. So as well as sort of compensating and balancing the emissions that we do produce, mostly from the flights, as Liz said, that's something that's unavoidable for us at the moment. We want to reduce the emissions in our operations as much as we can. So that is funding projects for you as our partners that help you to do that. And obviously that helps us to see long-term reductions in our emissions year after year, but also, it impacts everything else that you're doing as well. So we don't expect you to just use these things when World Challenge is there. We want it to have a really positive impact on your community and your work long term. So that might be things, we're going to talk about this in more detail, but that might be things like thinking about putting solar panels on your buildings, for example, would be a good example of that. We continue to measure our emissions, so that's something we do every year, and we will continue to track sort of the emissions that we believe we're producing throughout our operations, and then the work we're doing to reduce that as well. So I've put here renewable energy and efficiency projects that directly benefit our partner community. So that really links to that part of the Climate Action Fund. We also want to use more of our budgets to look at climate education and capacity building within our partner destinations and with you, our partner organisations. So obviously we talk a lot about World Challenge students and the development that they experience throughout a World Challenge trip, but we also want to ensure and help you to work with local communities, local young people as well, to make sure that they also have access and opportunities to learn about these same topics. So a part of the Climate Action Fund will be available for that. So looking at climate education within your communities, and also sort of capability building and capacity building training for your teams and for your communities in different areas too. And then also we want to continue to look at nature restoration in the destinations where our teams visit. So again, this regeneration programs that we've been involved with, we can see, we understand the impact of them. That's something we want to continue. We will probably also continue to work with our external partner, but we also want to open up this fund so that you have the opportunity to access it as well. So when you are looking at nature restoration and regeneration programs, that you can tap in to this fund to help you support them. And then what we hope, wherever possible, and it's not always 100% possible, but we hope that when our teams are on the ground with you, that's something that they would be able to see and experience for themselves. So again, really helping to solidify and cement that deeper understanding that Liz was talking about. So for us, it's really an evolution of lots of things that we've done in the past, really bringing it together under this Climate Action Fund that we have, and making it available, these funds, to you, our partners, our experts. We are not experts in development in your area and your region, and you are. So making sure that you have access to that. We mentioned flights, so before we talk more about the details of the Climate Action Fund, I do just want to address that. We do work very closely with our reservations team to see how we can reduce the environmental impact of the flights that our teams take. So looking at how we can get more direct routes, how we can use trains or public transport, for example, so that we don't have to fly, and looking at how the industry, the aviation industry, is developing in terms of the use of sustainable aviation fuels. Unfortunately, that has been a lot slower than we anticipated originally when we started to set our targets around carbon reduction, but it is something that we continue to be involved with, and at an industry level, we'd really, this year, one of our goals is to sort of be even more involved, to try and put pressure on airlines to make those changes and to select the airlines that are doing that work. So that is something that we will also continue to do. But the Climate Action Fund for us is really about looking at where we have control, where we can, as a community, as a network, where we can make those changes, and really focusing our efforts and our funds there as well. So now we're going to go into sort of a lot more detail of the fund. It's our first year running it, so we're going to go into the detail of everything you would need to know as a partner to apply for it this year. So back to you, Liz.
Yeah, so we're going to start with who can apply. As Emma said, it is the first year running it. We are looking for partners to apply who have been working with us for a year. So if you're not eligible this year, you'll be able to apply in future years. So don't be too disheartened. But yeah, you need to have been working with us for at least a season. So I said a year, but really, like, you need to have run a set of teams. So probably last summer, although some of you may have worked with some of our Australian groups in the last few months. And that's really just about us making sure that it's a good fit, that our partnership is right, that we've got that kind of long-term vision together that's going to kind of last into the future. So we're going to invest in partnerships that are long term, that we kind of are working towards a shared aim for the future. So you must have had some of the groups already for us to be able to have established that, and to have a good understanding of what you're doing and how it all works on the ground. So we're looking at that kind of full understanding of how our organisation is working with yours and how the two are collaborating. And in that, you also need to have got good feedback. So we talk a lot about our Net Promoter Score at NPS. So the feedback that we get from our school leaders, the teachers on our trips, who rate their experience at the community out of 10, then is calculated into a Net Promoter Score, and we're looking for that Net Promoter Score to be 50 or higher. So we want to make sure that the partnership is really a successful one, that everything is going well on the ground. So those are kind of the key things that would allow or exclude you from this kind of first round. And like I said, it is a first round, so it doesn't mean you'll never be able to apply. It might just mean that, we need another season with you to work on some of that feedback, or get to know you a little bit better before you become eligible. If you're not sure whether you meet the requirements, just ask Emma and she'll be happy to let you know. So don't worry if you're unsure. Back to Emma.
Thanks, Liz. Awesome. So now what is the fund for? So I talked a bit about sort of our reasons for launching the Climate Action Fund, and covered quite a lot of this already. But here I just want to go into a little bit more detail and also talk about the typical sort of fund size, the grant range. So this year we are looking at typical grant range of £500 to £3,000. So I have done that in Great British pounds. But we are also sort of expecting that some of you will come to us with larger projects. This again, it's our first year running this Climate Action Fund. We want a number of you to be able to access it. But we do understand that if you have a larger project that you want to work on and you don't have funding from elsewhere, that you might want to apply for a slightly bigger amount than listed here. You can do that. So the key thing when it comes to us sort of judging the size of the grant that we will be able to give is the transparency that you have provided. So we need to know how that money is going to be spent. So we want to see quotes, for example. If you're going to need materials, we want to understand the cost of that. And we want to make sure that you've taken everything into account. So we also want to know, what will the labour costs be? For example, have you made sure that you understand all of the costs that are involved in implementing this project? The application form will ask you if you're also looking for funding or you have received funding from elsewhere as well. That's brilliant. We definitely encourage that wherever you can. But also we understand if you want to focus on the World Challenge Climate Action Fund for a particular project, that's also okay. It's really that transparent information that we need to make sure that you know how much it's going to cost, and that we are able to provide enough to make sure that the implementation can go all the way to the end. The things that we're going to be funding this year, I mentioned already, but we're looking at operational improvements, nature-based solution, climate adaptation and community resilience, and climate education and monitoring. Now, if you download the Climate Action Fund Partner Pack, which probably most of you have if you're here today, but I will also share again after this call. It goes into lots of detail about different types of projects that would be eligible under these categories. That is not an exhaustive list. If you don't see your project there, you can ask. So please just reach out, send me a message and ask if it would be eligible. I don't want to sort of waste your time in you applying and it not be eligible, but I am always here. So I'll make sure you have my email address if you don't already have it. You can ask me questions about the types of projects you're considering and whether they'd be eligible this year for the fund. If you think we're missing a big category on here that should be eligible, also let me know. It's the first year, so we're learning and growing. So if you think we're missing something, please come to me as well. There are a few key things that we will not be funding this year, and you can also find those in the partner pack, but they are related to things we've discussed today. So we're looking to help you to develop long-term solutions with this. We're not looking to fund one-off projects or things that will just be for the World Challenge team that's coming this year. We're really looking at supporting your long-term strategy and supporting those goals. Liz.
To me. So how are we going to choose who's going to receive the support? We are hoping to be able to support quite a number of projects. It obviously depends a little bit on the amount of funding that each project requires in terms of the actual number that will end up receiving support, but it could be as many as 10 or 15 different projects that get support. So there is definitely lots of support to go around. There's not it's not just going to be one or two people that are going to receive that, and that's part of the reason why we are aiming to provide a certain amount of funding per project and putting some tentative limitations on that so that we're able to support a range of projects in a range of locations as well. Once all of the applications are in, we're going to assess them using a points-based system. So there are 4 areas of the assessment: strategic fit, feasibility, impact potential, and value for money. And under each one, there are a number of different criteria, and points up to 3 per criteria will be awarded on the extent to which the project meets that criteria. So in terms of strategic fit, we're looking for something that is clearly going to make an impact on climate mitigation, carbon reduction, climate adaptation. We're looking for something that is clearly linked to the aim, or that is going to improve community resilience, and that is locally owned and has a long-term relevance. So we keep saying this long-term. We don't want to do something that's gonna make an impact this year, but is then going to need refunding again next year. We want to put things in place that are going to last and going to make long-term change. We're looking at feasibility in terms of, is it realistic? Is the timeline realistic? Is the people plan there to support its implementation? Are any risks identified and manageable? Are they being thought about? Is anything that might go wrong being considered? The impact potential, you know, how many people, what ecosystem, what's the extent to the potential benefit of your project? How strong is that impact? So if we're talking about emissions reduction, how much are we talking about? Is it going to make a big difference? And how will it continue after the funding ends? How will you maintain it? Is there an ongoing requirement? Who will do that? That kind of thing. And then value for money is also important. So, you know, Emma mentioned, is the budget transparent? Can we see that you've really considered everything on that side? And what's the cost compared to the impact? You know, what's the benefit proportion? And then are we using local suppliers? Are we reinvesting in your destination as part of the project? Is also something that we'll be looking for an extra point. So lots of different things there. The key thing is that when you do your application, give us as much information as you can. If there's anything glaringly missing, Emma will let you know. We're not looking to catch people out, but we do just want to, you know, really understand, what are you going to do? Why is it important? How is it going to be managed? So that we can really kind of assess it properly. So we'll take a look at every proposal, and we'll go through them, and then we'll be allocating the funding based on the scoring system, and obviously looking at the amounts of funding that have been requested and how we can kind of utilize them best across all the applications that we get. So we will aim to get back to you reasonably quickly, but it will take us a little bit of time to kind of go through that process once we've got all of your information from you. Thanks, Emma.
Thanks, Liz. And then finally, some important dates. So we're going to open up to questions after this slide, but just some important dates, again, that are listed in the information pack, but I just wanted to go through together as well. So both Liz and I have mentioned it already, but I am your key contact for the Climate Action Fund. So any questions that you have, please ask me. Once we receive your application, as Liz mentioned, I'll have a quick look. If I can see anything that I think is missing or we might need more information about, I will let you know. And yeah, anything that you need as you prepare your application or as we go through the process, feel free to come to me directly for that. So applications officially opened on January 1st, and the deadline for this round of the Climate Action Fund is February 1st. So we've said this is the first time we're doing this, and we want to be really open with you about that. There will be more opportunities to apply for the fund. So if you're not eligible in this round, or you know it hasn't been enough time to collect the information that you need, don't worry. Please do let me know. So if you would like to apply but you don't think it's possible in this round, please just send me an email to let me know that. If you can let me know what the challenges are, that will help us to better prepare the fund in the future so that, again, we can support you as much as possible with the application. So throughout March, we will review the applications. Again, I might have some more questions. So if we're going through your application and again, I might need a bit more information to properly consider it, I'll come back to you and I might ask for that. So please provide as much information as you can. But if we need more, I will come back. The decisions will be made by the 1st of April, so we'll have 1 month as our review period, and there will be sort of review discussions within World Challenge. So it won't just be decided by me and Liz. There will be a number of people involved in making those decisions this year. Then the project implementation window is April to September. And we've put sort of a little caveat on this, which is unless otherwise discussed. So ideally, we would like teams traveling to you this year to be able to see your progress, to better understand how you're accessing the fund and the work that you're doing. But you might find that actually it doesn't take that long to implement your project. Or you might find that actually it's going to take longer. Those are okay, but we need to know. So if it's going to be a really quick project, please let us know. And when we move on to the next point to talk about funds, we might be able to release some of your funds earlier in the process. Or if it's going to take longer than that, April, May, June, July, August, September, 6 months sort of period, also do just keep us informed of that as well. So when it comes to your MIG project report and the funding, you'll have read in the pack that the way that we've set up the fund is that you would receive 50% once you have approval for your project and 50% once we have received your mid-project report. Now, this project report is due no later than the 1st of June. But if your project's going to be finished much quicker than that and you need the funds earlier than that, again, we are open to that option. You just need to tell us in your application what your timeline is and where you're going to need those funds. All of the reporting is required. So you will see in the pack, if you do not complete the reports, you will not be eligible for any World Challenge funding in the future. So they are not optional. You are required to deliver the reports as outlined in the information pack. The final reporting deadline is then the 30th of September. Again, if we've already discussed with you that your project has a shorter or longer time frame than that, that's okay. We will discuss that individually with you. But to give shape, ideally, we would like to have the final reports in by the 30th of September so that we can share them with our schools when we're preparing to measure and report on our impact as a company. It will allow us to include that information. And then there will be a year one check-in. So you will see that that's your final reporting deadline. We will expect to understand the project and sort of the ongoing maintenance, if that's required, what your plan is moving forward for keeping that project on track at that point. But then we will do a year one check-in. So a year later, we will also ask you either to submit a simple report, or we're very lucky in the sense that we often have World Challenge representatives in terms of our expedition leaders with you on the ground. It might be that the next year we've asked them to have a chat with you to look at the project and its ongoing development and make sure that you're on track according to what you've outlined in your final report. So unlike probably quite a lot of other funding sort of opportunities that you might have, we obviously spend lots of time together. We talk a lot. We plan for different teams coming to spend time with you. We have teams and World Challenge colleagues on the ground with you. So we are here to support you, to work with you, and to hopefully be involved as this grows and develops. So the reports are required, but we also really want it to be sort of a two-way conversation as you move forward as well. Brilliant. That's the end of our sort of slides and the information around the Climate Action Fund. We are now open to any questions that you have. I'm going to try and allow your microphones if anyone would like to open their microphones, or you can obviously put it into the question box as well. So please go ahead. Does anyone have any questions? No, I'm unmuting you all if you want to speak. if not, I will just share a few sort of FAQs that have come through. Go ahead, Marie.
Hi.
Hey.
Thanks so much for all this amazing input. Really exciting. And good morning, good day, good whatever time of day it is, wherever you are, to everyone. So we're really interested in applying. One challenge for us would be just getting everything that we need in place before the deadline date. That's one challenge. But also, I think just getting everything ready for the rollout of the project itself would require more time. So, I mean, we haven't discussed this at all, but it's something that's just sort of popped up through this discussion, is that from our side, it might make more sense to put an application together for next year. So I suppose the question is this definitely going to be something that will be available next year? Could we start putting in, an application now for next year? Is that something that we could start working on right now? Should we rather wait until next year? Do you want to see how this all goes? We may get something ready in time, but I would imagine not. So yeah, that's our question.
Yeah, great question. Thank you. So the answer to whether this will continue is yes. We are committed to having this fund available for the foreseeable future. As you know, it's the first time that we're running it. So we do imagine there will be a number of learnings that come from this year. So it is possible that next year there might be some slight adjustments to the application process. I imagine there will be things that come up and we learn that mean we will adjust that slightly. In terms of your application, you're more than welcome, Roz, to send me a quick email that sort of outlines what you are hoping to do. It's possible that, it might be that we could separate that. So there might be different parts to the project that you could maybe have some funded this year and some funded next year. Yeah. Or if you wanted to wait, you could do that. I think that a lot of the questions in the application form will remain the same. So you could start to prepare for that. But I would wait in terms of submitting your application because, yeah, if the process or the form changes slightly, I don't want to waste your time and ask you to do it twice.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thanks, Emma.
Yeah, no worries. I'm very excited to hear what you're planning.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Emma, someone in the chat is asking about how do they get their MPS score. Are you happy to just let anyone know who isn't sure what they're at?
Absolutely. Great question again. So when you and I have discussed the feedback from the teams that have visited you, I will have given you the scores. So when the teams return from their trip, we ask them a number of questions, and we ask them about their experience and the learning opportunities that they've had when they've spent time with you. And they will then score their experience out of 10. We then use this to create what is called an MPS score, and essentially it takes all of the really, really brilliant scores and any that are slightly lower, and it gives an average that tells us Net Promoter Score is sort of how likely that person is to recommend you to a friend. So we look at that across World Challenge. It's a really key metric that we have when we sort of look at our success and our progress. And so I will have calculated that score for your initiative if you have hosted teams. So if you've not hosted teams yet, you won't have an MPS score, but if you have hosted teams with us, you can just ask me. So again, as Liz said earlier, if you're not sure what your MPS score is, or you're not sure if you would be eligible, please feel free to ask, and I will share the MPS with you. Again, this is sort of how we are setting up the fund this year. As Liz mentioned, we really want to make sure that in this first year, we're working with partners that we know we're going to be working with for a long time, and we already know you quite well, and we really understand your work and work well together. But again, that could change slightly in the future. But for this year, we really want to focus on those projects so that we can all sort of learn and develop together as we sort of plan more for this fund. Thanks. Is there any other questions at the moment?
Yeah, just like a quick question, like from my side. Because we have been hosting like wholesale in last 2 years, and looking at the program, and we may not have any group this year, and we still apply for the funding. I think we can like we can have a more than 50% NPS, because I have seen the like all the schools they have provided, and it was like relatively high. It means NPS should be above the 50%, but we are not having any group this year, and so can we still apply for that?
Yeah. Hi, Vishnu. Yeah, really great question. Yes, you can. It's actually not something that we outlined in the pack, but you absolutely can apply for funding. The rules that we've set out with who is eligible this year is really about long-term partnerships. So if we know that we're going to be working with you in the future, obviously each year the number of teams in different destinations does fluctuate. So it is possible that some years you might not have as many teams, or you might not have teams. But as long as we see our partnership as a really long-term, strong partnership, you are eligible to apply. So yes, don't worry too much about that. And then we have another question in here. Oh, hi Jess, about is the Climate Action Fund only applicable for initiative partners, or can any supplier such as accommodation apply for it too? That is again a brilliant question. And the answer is absolutely. We would love to receive applications from accommodation partners. Jess, you will probably also received an email from Emily about options for electric vehicles that we might have. This fund is open to all World Challenge partners. So this training is for our community partners and our initiative partners today, but the funding is available to anyone who works with World Challenge on the ground. So absolutely, Jess, that's a great question. Any other questions? We've run slightly over, but we can. Awesome. Thank you, Jess. Just seen your message back. Answer anything else quickly? Perfect. If there's nothing else immediately, we will end it there. But please reach out. We want to give you this funding. We really would like this funding this year to come to you, our partners. So if you have any questions, please do ask me. I'm more than happy to jump on a quick call, help to go through your application if that's helpful, or explain any of the details if anything isn't quite clear. So please just send me an email and I would be more than happy to do that. And thank you all so much for taking the time to be here today, for looking at all of our sort of different practices and how we can all be more sustainable, and also for considering applying for this fund. We feel incredibly lucky that we get to work with you all as our partners, and we're really excited to take this next step with you as well. What you'll see very finally on my screen is upcoming training opportunities. So same as last year, we're going to be running a number of online trainings this year. They are mostly optional. So I will send you the invites if you think it's helpful for you, or your team or anyone that you work with. You are welcome to join us. And then there is one this year that is going to be required. So not necessarily joining live, but there is a requirement for those hosting our teams this year to participate. So on the 26th of February, I'm going to be joined by Ben Sapsford, our safety manager here at World Challenge. And we're going to be talking all about preparing and writing a risk assessment. So a number of you this year have asked me how you can improve your skills in that area, what you might need to look at, how World Challenge prepares our risk assessments, and all the different things that go into that as well. So if you are interested in learning more about how you can prepare and write risk assessments, and also how we do it here at World Challenge, that's a really great training opportunity for you. And then I'll just quickly touch on the one in March, because we've gone 5 minutes over, which is around safeguarding. So this is going to be a requirement this year for anyone who is hosting our teams. More information on this will follow, but whether you can join live or listen to that one recorded, that one is one that we will require our partners to watch this year. We're then going to look later in April about creating learning opportunities, those teachable moments that Liz mentioned, and then we'll do a top tips session ahead of the peak season as well. Thank you all so much again. Thank you for sticking with us and staying with us till the end, and really very nice to see you all, and really looking forward to catching up soon. So thanks again very much, everyone. Thank you so much, Liz, for your wisdom as always. Speak to you all soon. Bye.
Thank you.